Hey guys, it's John with Dip Fanatics. Today we're going to be talking about sanding and buffing your vehicle after a paint job. We tell you that this is sandable and buffable. So we're going to prove that it's sandable and buffable. We're going to show you the steps on how to do it. This was actually painted yesterday. Some of you may be thinking, well, that's pretty close to completion of painting to go right in and start detailing. Well, if you know what you're doing in terms of detailing, it's absolutely fine because it's actually easier to remove any orange peel or dust nibs the day after instead of letting it cure for a few weeks. It becomes a little bit harder to remove it because the gloss fully cures, it hardens, and it's a little bit tougher. It may take a little bit more time. So we start the day after. Now you can already see here on the trunk lid, it's already extremely glossy. The reason that we're doing this, we would leave the car like this, but we're doing this because we're going to be shooting our chrome paint over the top of this gloss black surface. So we want to make sure there's no dust nibs or anything like that because the chrome will show imperfections in the paint. So let's talk about a few things that you're going to need to accomplish this job. Now, you're going to notice that some of the tools here are very inexpensive. It does not take expensive tools to detail a car. We're actually going to be using a Harbor Freight polisher today to show you that it really doesn't matter what kind of a polisher you have as long as you're just doing the process correctly. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about sanding the surface. We start off with 1500 grit sandpaper here. 1500 grit sandpaper. We will follow this by 2000 and then our 3000 disc followed by our 5000 Trizact sanding disc. Now, can you do this by hand? Absolutely. Especially with it being the day after painting, it's going to be very easy to do this by hand. This is for demonstrational purposes. There are things on the vehicle that we will do by hand, some of your harder to reach areas. Besides your sanding disc, another thing that you're going to want to have is water. If you're doing it by hand or whether you're doing it by a DA sander, I'll tell you this, water is very important, especially when you get into your finer grits, your 3000 and your 5000s. We will definitely be using water. You can decide on your 1500 and your 2000 whether you want to use water or not. It's not a requirement. We feel it gets a lot better grip. It saves your sandpaper. That's the big thing, is it makes that piece of sandpaper go a lot farther through the project, as well as safety net, because if it's wet, you know, it's not going to be as aggressive and it's not going to just destroy through. Burning through paint is a reality. It happens. So let's talk about burning through the paint. As you can see here, we've taped off our edges. Extremely important because you don't want to burn any edges on any fresh paint. If you'll notice here, we also taped off this line here. Why did we do that? This edge here, or any edge on the vehicle, that is going to be your easiest spot to burn through the gloss. It'll rip that edge off. It's very simple to do. So what we do is we'll tape this line, hit the top of the trunk. Then after we do that, we've completed the process. We will then take it off and we will tape the top edge and hit this surface here. So it's very important to tape off your edges. Don't ruin a fresh paint job, especially when you've taken all the prep time in between your base coats, all the way through to your gloss. You've laid it down, it looks perfect, and then you burn an edge. So let's talk about a couple other things. Like I said, we have our Harbor Freight polisher here. This one here is a rotary. It's not a dual action. If you've never done polishing, I highly recommend getting a dual action polisher. What it does is it spins as well as jumps as it moves. So it spins and jumps. What that does is it doesn't allow you to get too hot in one spot. When you get too hot in one spot, you can burn through. Remember, when you're sanding, you're taking off some of the gloss to make it smooth. So what that means is the more you sand and the smoother it gets, the less gloss on the vehicle. Don't burn through. If you've never done polishing, get a dual action polisher. Very important. Harbor Freight also sells a dual action polisher, but we're going to go ahead and just use a rotary today. Two pads you'll need, for sure, is a compounding pad as well as a polishing or finishing pad. Very important to have those two because those are the two steps. Can you get by with just compounding and then leaving it at that? Yes, you can. But you definitely need to do the steps then of going all the way up to 3000 to 5000 grit. And I'll tell you this, you will get more depth of the gloss by using a polish. So our polishes and compounds, let's get onto that. I love this stuff. This is Meguiar's 105 cutting compound. This stuff is amazing. It brings the gloss back a lot faster. We've used the 3Ms and the Perfectants, and I don't know if it has to do with our paint or what. We've actually used it on OEM paint actually, so that's not true. It does the same thing. We find that it brings the gloss back a lot faster, so you're not nervous, because when you sand, it's gonna look matte finish. So when you use that 105 compound, it really is kind of a breath of fresh air to see that gloss come back after a few passes and really bring back that shine, so you don't get nervous that you're not gonna be able to bring it back. Now we do use the 3M polish. I do like their polish, it is a good polish. I've also used the 205 from Meguiar's. That's also a great polish. I mean, to be honest, we use the 205 probably more than we use the 3M, but for today's purposes, I'm going to be using the 3M polish. Another thing when it comes to detailing, sanding, polishing, anything, take off your jewelry. Here I have my wedding ring as well as my watch. I've removed it. Keep everything off your hands. You don't want anything to scratch the surface. Remember this, we're doing paint correction. So don't have anything that could damage the paint. We're correcting paint right now. We don't want to damage it, so I took my rings off. Another thing you're going to need is some microfiber towels. One final thing that you definitely should have that I always keep on hand, this is painting and detailing, is a tack rag. So important, because anything that's sitting on here, any type of dust or anything like that, can scratch the surface. I use this for painting to remove dust and things like that before I put on coats. This works extremely well for getting things off the vehicle before I start sanding. Always keep a tack rag on hand. So now we're gonna go ahead and jump in. We're gonna start off with our 1500 grit. And since this is already so smooth, we're really just gonna kind of focus on denibbing it. It is a fresh paint job. It doesn't matter if you're spraying in a really, really expensive spray booth or you're spraying in your garage. I know guys in the auto industry that paint cars every day, and guess what? They still get nibs all over the paint job. It just happens. You can't control all the dust in the air. It will probably end up getting there. So let's go ahead and jump in. Let's get started with our sanding project. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a nice tack off. Remember, I have nothing on my sleeve, so if I touch it, it's not really that big of a deal because I have nothing on here that can scratch the surface. I'm going to denib it like this first. Then what I like to do is I like to make long passes. Now I'll make long passes on purpose because if there's anything on here that's not getting caught by the tack rag, I want it to go and fall off the surface. So now that we have that done, we're going to go ahead and slap some sanding disc on and get sanding. Now another key thing when it comes to sanding is having a backing plate. Do not sand without a backing plate if you're using a sander. It's very important. What it does, first off, is it helps you go around any curvatures. So that's really important. Another thing too, is it helps make sure that your sandpaper is staying flat on the surface. You want it to be extremely flat. You want it to lay like this. Well, if I wasn't using a backing plate, I could run the risk of any spots that are unlevel, it starts bouncing off the surface. It's very hard to keep it really level on the surface if you're not using a backing plate. So definitely get one of these. It will save you a lot of hassle, a lot of time. I like to make sure my sandpaper is on there nice and smooth. All right, let's grab our hose. See how we're good. All right, so now what I'll do is I'll take this water. I'll actually give this a couple dusts, and then I'm gonna dust some right here on the surface. Now I like to start off in halves, so I'm gonna go ahead and start off on a half here. Let's get going. Okay, now right away we can see that we've denibbed it. It looks great, we've wiped it off, and we're pretty much right down to where we want to be. It actually has a little bit less orange peel than a factory black finish, so we're happy with it. It's great. Now I'll tell you this is what I mean by saving your pads. Don't just take this and set this off to the side, switch pads. What I like to do first is take this water and I like to spray off the pad, because what you'll notice is you're going to see pieces of clear coat actually fall off the pad. So now this pad can be used another day. Now we're actually going to start over here. We're going to finish up this side, and then we're going to move on to our next grit of sandpaper. All right guys, so now we've finished sanding the vehicle. We've done it all the way through 5,000. We went 1,500, 2,000, 3,000, followed by the Trizact 5,000 grit. Now, as you can see here on the panel, it is ultra glossy again. That's kind of the perk of that 5,000, is that it brings the gloss back. This has zero compound, it says zero polish. This is literally just after sanding. So now we're gonna get into compounding as well as polishing to show you how to do it. It's extremely simple. Pretty much the main thing you wanna think about whenever you're compounding and polishing is this. Don't try to go too fast. Don't try to rush the machine or do anything like that. You're gonna wanna go in a nice motion and finish it up with your polish to bring out the most gloss. If you think this is glossy now, it's gonna be extremely glossy, very visible when we're done polishing, compounding and polishing. So let's get started. That's like glass. That's with no polish. That's just compound. So we're gonna go ahead and finish it all up and show you an after shot. And this is what we mean by a glass finish. This is what happens when you sand and polish your car. It looks amazing. It is a mirror finish. And it looks phenomenal. So to sum everything up, what was the point of this video? We wanted to accomplish two things when making this video. One is to prove that our coating is sandable and buffable. And not only that, we did it the day after. The second thing we wanted to accomplish was to show you that you can go about achieving a show car finish. Maybe on cars that you'll be taking to car shows or restoration, and it is removable. So how is that important to you? Well, the facts are is you can change the color of your car every year. Try different metallics, do different color changing pearls, maybe even do just basic colors. Paint it the following year and give it an ultra perfect finish. I would put this paint job up against any paint job out there. This coating is one, removable, and two, it is just absolutely perfect and stunning, and it has met all of our expectations and beyond. Guys, it's John. Thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next one.